if God created man in his image, then why is there evil in people? Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingston, Texas, USA, with another episode of TNT Twisted New Testament, or Judaism and Christianity, a contrast with our awesome Houston Rabbi Stuart Federow. Welcome back. Don't smoke crack.
Yeah.
It's been too long. I'm sorry, but I have to dish that out every once in a while.
I know. You have it inside you. It's just got to come out one way or the other.
And everyone has to admit, it is great advice. It really is great advice.
Well, yes, it is. But associated with me just is weird.
No,
it
is. It is weird. So, yeah, It sounded like I was telling you to not smoke crack. Yeah, that's not something you would ever consider. So, anyway, welcome back, Rabbi. I need to lighten my camera. It looks like I'm too dark in here. Do I have all my lights on? I think I've got a light missing. I'll fix that in a few minutes. Okay, so, I just broke my knee brace. No way, dude. I need that to
knee
fix.
Brace?
Yeah, I've got a torn meniscus, and I think I've got two knee braces. One of them is a softer one, but I kind of upgraded it.
William, are you getting surgery for it?
No. Shoot, are you kidding me? We don't have insurance. That's crazy. Okay, hold on. I don't think I broke it. I think it just slipped out of the notch. Okay, cool. I looked down and the thing was poking me in the leg. I was like, what is going on with that? Sorry, guys. That was the impromptu leg brace fix. Yeah, so these things, I bought a knee brace from the local drugstore. It was like $40. It was kind of cheap, but it looked nice. It had slots in it for these brackets that were in there. But upon further inspection, those brackets were just for looks, to make it look like it was more expensive. So I took the brackets off, and I had some strips of aluminum, like a quarter-inch thick aluminum, which is really, really hard to bend. And so I cut two pieces off and made new ones that are solid, so that way it limits my leg movement, but I can still move it, and they work brilliantly. It's so cool. Yeah, Book Mouse, I heard about that. It says use ice for your knee. I was going to use the hot tub, but they said, no, don't use hot anything for that sort of thing. It'll make it worse. So. But anyway, no, it's actually great. I think it's been over a month now, and just now it's starting to feel better because I've been really rigid. I've been with my own. I've been very disciplined in making sure I'm wearing a knee brace of some kind, even when I'm sleeping at night. And it's so helpful.
Don't want to make it worse.
Okay, so starting this whole show off, I'm going to give you the context of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Someone had asked me about if God created man in his image, then why is there evil in people? And I think the verse I quoted for them was Genesis chapter 8 something. And it says that a child is wicked from his youth. It specifically doesn't say from birth. It says from his youth. And so the follow-up email literally said, that didn't answer my question. Where did evil originate and why? And so I thought that was a brilliant way of asking the question. And so that's why we called the show, Where Did Evil Originate and Why? So that's where we're going. And guys, the phone lines will be open. In fact, I'm going to open them now. If you do happen to call in right now, I'll probably take your call while Rabbi's talking, and then we will arrange the calls in a nice fashionably order. This is for New Testament questions, so 855-952. It's on your screen. 4253. Write that down. We'll have somebody put it in chat here soon too. But yeah, if you guys have calling questions, and if we don't have any calling questions, and we're in, then we'll come back to, like John Van Manen has a question that we'll come back to, as long as I don't lose it. So we may have to copy and paste it somewhere. I think the chat disappears after about 30 minutes in and starts dropping earlier messages. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Okay, so Rabbi, that's where we're going to kick it off right now. So where did evil originate and why?
I don't think anybody's going to like my answer.
That's okay.
Okay.
There's differing opinions anyway, so this is one of them.
I don't see how evil cannot exist. Okay, and I'm not talking about free will, not yet. So there is an absolutely wonderful scene in an absolutely wonderful movie starring John Denver, may he rest in peace, the singer, and it's Oh God, Book 2.
I vaguely remember the title of that. I don't know if I saw Oh God with the old man.
Well, George Burns.
Yes, that was the first
played
one.
God.
Yeah, right.
And in the first, I said John Denver. That was the first one. In the first movie, Oh God, the first Oh God movie, John Denver plays a grocery store clerk who gets visited by God, George Burns' character, and is commanded to, make people aware of God. And there was a sequel to it. And I got to tell you, the first one with John Denver and the second one with this little girl, uh, I felt to be an incredibly Jewish film. Then they came out with Oh God Book 3, and now then you get the devil, and that's it. It lost its, in my opinion, lost its Jewish flavor. Never checked out who wrote the first two in comparison with who wrote the third one, but nevertheless, that's what I felt. So there's a line in book 2 where George Burns playing God is in I think it's an abandoned railroad station, but he's walking with the little girl who was the hero of the whole thing. And she asks him that question. She says, "Why is there evil in the world? Why can't you get rid of evil?" And George Burns' character playing God turns to the little girl and said, "Because I have a very hard time creating a one-sided coin. I have a hard time creating a one-sided coin." In other words, for people to really understand what is good in the world, they also have to understand what is bad in the world. If all a person ever knows is everything's great and wonderful, how can they recognize that it's great and wonderful? Because they take it for granted. I mean, really take it for granted, because there's no alternative to having something that is good. So of course it's good. So George Burns' character says, I had a hard time inventing good without inventing the opposite, so people know what good is. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Now, if all I can do is good, if I'm not capable of doing anything that's bad, why would I get credit, so to speak, for doing something that's good if that's all I am capable of doing?
Right.
Okay, if I have no choice but to do good, because there is no bad in the world, why would I get a pat on the back? Why would I get, I don't know how else to word it, why would I get credit, so to speak, for doing something that's good if I can't do anything that's bad?
Yep.
So I think that God has to invent the world in such a way so that human beings can know what bad is, which is why I have an unusual take on the creation story based on a few commentaries that are minority opinions, but I don't want, that takes too much time. Okay. But if we understand God as being the creator of the universe, Isaiah 45 verses 5 through 7 explicitly states that it is God who creates evil. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd like, I'm sorry?
That's Isaiah 45, I think, right?
Or Isaiah 45, 5 through 7.
Right.
Um, what was I going to say? So
Sorry.
if we understand that God's the creator of everything in the universe, and I think we're no longer in hurricane season because I think it's past November 1st, but or maybe it's the end of November. I don't remember. Hurricanes do not think. Hurricanes do not choose which beach is going to get overrun with floodwaters, or whose house is going to get flooded from a bad rainstorm. Okay, they don't think, they don't act, they just do. They're just there. But in the way God invented the universe, God invented the world, God invented Earth, God needs to change, to transfer a massive amount of energy from in and around the equator on both north and south hemispheres, God has to move a massive amount of energy from the equator basically to the north or to the far south, far north, far south. And the way in which that is done is by a hurricane. It moves an incredible amount of energy, and it's that transfer of energy that causes a cycle and gives us weather. Or it's one of the characteristics of our earth that gives us weather. You want rain to water your flowers, to be able to have potatoes and tomatoes and whatever to eat, then unfortunately you got to transfer this massive amount of energy. In the process of transferring the energy, there are going to be things that happen which are not going to be well thought of by the owners of a house that gets flooded by waters. Okay? We can call what happens to us bad, evil. A person drowns, at a young age because they're caught in a hurricane or a tornado with no warning or what have you. But if we posit that evil, start over. There are two kinds of evil in the world, and I mispronounce the words intentionally. There is natural evil of or pertaining to nature, like tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, fires, what have you. Okay. And the reason why I say natural instead of natural is if I say that it's natural, then instead of understanding that it comes from nature, people will say, he thinks that's normal. That's not, well, it's naturally we have it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about other pertaining to nature. Okay. Termites get hungry. They see wood and they go devour it, and it happens to be somebody's house. The termites are not determining whose house it is. Oh, that's Stuart Federow's house. Let's go eat his house. Okay, they're just acting according to nature, and as a part of nature, my house gets eaten up by termites. But there's another kind of nature. I'm sorry, start over. There's another kind of evil in the world, which is man-made. God forbid a million times somebody gets behind the wheel of a car under the influence. Alcohol, drugs, marijuana, what have you. Their ability to drive is impaired. And their choice makes bad things happen. A person decides that the only way they can get money is to rob a bank, and in the course of doing so, hurt or, God forbid, a million times kill the clerk behind the store. That's man-made evil. It is definitely evil, but it's by human choice. Human choice evil is extremely easy to explain, understand. People have the ability to choose evil just as like they have the ability to choose to do good. And as we said a few minutes ago, you really do have to be equally free to choose to do evil as you are free to choose to do good, or else what's the benefit of choosing good? It's not it's not to your benefit. I'm sorry, it's not to your credit. Okay. It's all you could choose. So, why should there be a heaven? Okay, an afterlife, either for punishment or for pleasure, however you want to understand either of those terms, if we're not deserving of it. If I can't choose to do good and I have to choose evil, like some religions say with original sin, then why should I be punished? Not my fight, not my fault. God made me this way and brought me into the world. So the real kind of evil that we have to really discuss and talk about is that part of natural evil, the part of evil that comes from nature, because that includes things like leukemia, God forbid, cancers, God forbid, heart attacks, God forbid, genetics. And for that, we ask the question, why did this happen? And for that, we're going to look to God and say, God, why did you do this to me? I'm not quite convinced that God picks and chooses, what's the line? What bird nest falls out of the tree? My understanding of God is that things happen, and I don't necessarily blame God for it, because that's what enables me to go to God and get help and support for when the bad things happen. Okay? If you've heard me say this before in other videos, if I punch you in the nose, are you going to come to me for solace and comfort because you got punched? To me, are you going to come to me if I'm the one who did it? So if we say that God did it to us, we're cutting ourselves off from the single greatest support of love and more moral support and strength and inspiration in the universe. So I don't necessarily blame God. Isn't it funny how when good things happen, everybody assumes that's what they deserve? Everybody assumes that's how nature should be handling it. Everybody assumes that this is how it should be. But as soon as something bad happens, they want to have it explained. They want to justify. They want, tell me why. It's like Job. Job is a very interesting book. Okay, it's because it's a lot of poetry, and poetry in the Bible is usually some of the oldest sections of the Bible. And Job, they talk about the patience of Job. Job was not patient. Job wanted, he didn't want to, he knew he was suffering for a reason. He didn't say to God, take away the suffering. What he said was, just tell me why I'm suffering. Tell me why. And God's answer, after the friends try to blame, well, you did something bad, you just don't know what it is. And the text explicitly says that Job was a righteous man, contrary to some religions that say that no one can be righteous. But at the end of the book of Job, God comes to the friends, condemns them for what they said. And even though Job, 42, even though Job will never understand the answer, when God is reprimanding the friends of Job, he says to them, only Job has spoken rightly. You're not going to understand why evil exists, but you're right to demand justice. You're right to ask the question why. You may not understand an answer, but you're right to demand to ask the question. Okay, because asking the question is a demand for justice in the world, and if we don't demand it in some respects, we're not going to demand it in any respect. And sometimes demanding justice is the right thing to do. You can't always just turn the other cheek, say, I love you, you love me, we're a happy family, now go do whatever you want. So I honestly think that those are my best reasons why I think evil exists. God can't make a world where it's only good, because then we don't understand what is good. We don't appreciate the good. We don't value the good because we have nothing to compare it with. Hard to make a one-sided coin. Because we have if we don't have the ability to choose between good and evil, if we don't have the ability to choose to do what is wrong, I'm not talking about mistakes. I'm not talking about good intentions. Okay, I'm talking about making the choice to do something that we know is wrong. If we don't have the ability to choose what is wrong, why should we get a pat on the back from anybody if we choose to do good, if that's the only choice we can make? So, and by the way, William, in Genesis 8:21, okay, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. I have never met an infant. I have never met an infant who said to his mommy, Mommy, I know you're tired. I know it hasn't been that long since you gave birth to me. I know you may be hurting. So I will sit here. I will lay here with a dirty diaper. I will lay here and be bored. Okay, go rest, mommy. Don't take care of me. Go rest. That's not what a baby says. It's not what a child says. A baby says, you're going to do what I ask you to do right now, or I'm going to make you miserable. And you know how I'm going to make you miserable? Wah! You get my point?
I like Zoom because it started cutting off the noise.
Great.
That's great.
But I hope they heard enough to get
Yeah,
my
yeah, they get the point.
okay. A child is born knowing only one thing and one thing only. I want what I want when I want it. And you're going to give it to me or going to make you miserable. It's only over time that they learn how to be good. So when the biblical verse that William quoted, Genesis chapter 8, verse 21, and the eternal smelled the sweet savor, and the eternal said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Okay. And people say, oh, well, that's not evil. So if an adult says, you're going to do what I want you to do when I want you to do it, or I'm going to make you miserable, that's bad. But when a child does it, it's good. It's still selfish. So the child has to be taught what is goodness. A child has to be taught right from wrong. A child has to be taught not to be selfish. A child has to be taught sometimes to take the bad with the good in order to be able to appreciate what is good, which we talked about 5 seconds ago. So I think Genesis 8:21, when it says that man's heart is evil from his youth, I think that's actually true, because God places the burden on family, on parents, siblings, okay, to teach the baby as they grow up what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. That's my answer for that.
That works. That works. Somebody said earlier in chat that evil is needed, and that's absolutely correct, because without it, there's no good. You don't have anything to compare.
The Talmud, the mission, we're explicitly taught, if it were not for the inclination to do bad, we would not get married, we would not have a job, we would not have children. Okay?
Yep. Okay, well, we'll move right on to our caller. Let me switch back to the right one first. Hang on just a second here.
Are we going to do the name of God thing?
Let's use that as a backup if we run out of questions, or a starter for the next show.
Okay. All right. Starter for the next show then, at least, because
okay, sure.
There's a whole bunch of misconceptions about that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, no problem. Okay. All right, so good deal. So let me get this. I got him numbered here already. Number 2, Mr. Marcus. All right, sir. This is Mr. Not Madman Mark. What is your question you've got? Welcome back to the show, brother. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving upcoming. All right, here's the question. It's debated or speculated that Jesus went to the Far East, because the Gospels don't really give you any clue of his whereabouts from the time he was seen in the synagogue at the age of 12 or 13, and then it's fast forward to when he meets up with John the Baptist.
So you're wondering about the missing years of Jesus. Rabbi's having a hard time hearing you. I've got you cranked all the way up, but I can't turn you up anymore.
Right.
So basically wondering where the missing years of Jesus, where do you suspect, why are they missing, for one thing, and where do we suspect he was during all this time? I've heard a lot of different scenarios. Okay. Mark, thank you for your question. Yep.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead and hang up now until you've answered. Thanks. Caller, sit tight, caller. We'll be right back with you. Don't hang up, okay? All right, Rabbi, do you want to comment on that? And we got a couple other callers, so if you long or short it.
All right. According to the Christian New Testament text, Jesus was about 30 years of age when he decided to have a ministry. So we're talking about 30 years of his life. What's he doing? Okay. Now, I'm not convinced that anything at all whatsoever of the Christian New Testament is trustworthy in terms of what did happen, what didn't happen. They were written anywhere from 40 to 60 years after Jesus was dead and buried. They contradict each other. Matthew doesn't agree with Mark, doesn't agree with Luke, doesn't agree with John. Okay, but it doesn't really say anything about what happened with Jesus growing up. Okay, and assuming that, unlike the Gospel of Mark, which makes it sound like God all of a sudden says, "Oh, look at that Jesus coming out of the water. I choose him. He'll be my son," which gave rise to an early Christian heresy called adoptionism, where the text of Mark gave rise to the idea that Jesus was a human, normal like anybody else. Remember, Mark has no birth story, but he was adopted by God as God's son, as opposed to born of a virgin, and that whole bit, which you get from Matthew and Luke. Barring that, you'd have to really do a study, assuming anything can be believed in the New Testament. You'd have to do a study of what was life like for the average child growing up in the Promised Land 2,000 years ago. The ritual ceremony of bar and bat mitzvah's like 80 years ago. So bar mitzvah, well, that's not true. Actually, there's a discussion in it's a Mideast country, I don't remember what it is, that actually had a ceremony of coming of age at 12 years of age for a girl. So the point is that all of that is late. Okay, all of that is rabbinic. Okay, so we don't even know the start over. The Christian New Testament text talks about Jesus being in the temple around the age of 13. Oh, bar mitzvah. No, you can't do that. So you really have to study Eastern Mediterranean culture and how children were raised in similar or Israelite society to understand or know what happened with Jesus. The stories about Jesus. Well, he was in the temple, and all the scribes and Pharisees and people in the temple were just amazed at him. Well, who wrote that? Believers in Jesus who want to glorify him and make him sound, like he was already a scholar or something. So I don't know enough about what the culture and life was like 2,000 years ago, and we really don't get any picture of it because the intertestamental period, when the end of the TaNaCh was written, and the beginning of the New Testament, which also doesn't say anything about Jesus growing up, is hundreds of years. So other than to tell you that, I don't know how else to respond.
Okay, no problem at all. Okay, fair enough. Let's go ahead and move on to our next caller. Caller, you're live on the air. Please, caller, let you have on the air. Tell us what your name is and where you're calling from, please.
Hi, my name is Noel. I'm calling from Indiana.
Dear friends, hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNachTalk.com, TaNachTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
Hi, my name is Noel. I'm calling from Indiana.
Noel, go with your question.
Yes, for that, a quick sidebar. A couple years ago, I attended, Rabbi Singer came to, he was in Houston, and I attended it, and I didn't expect to see you there, William, but I saw you there, met you, shook your hand, and
very cool.
It was really nice. Yeah, really nice experience, and also the Rabbi Federow was there as well.
Oh, nice.
And I just wanted to mention that I had asked Rabbi Singer a question about the Star of David, and if it was bad, it was good, all that stuff.
Right.
And the rabbi answered my question pretty quickly, and so afterwards, Rabbi Federow came to me. And he talked to me, wanted to know if I had any questions, if I understood, and he just talked to me for about 10 minutes. And I really appreciated that from him. And,
I actually do
just something
remember
that I always take with me and remember. So I appreciate the both of you for, how you treated us and for the people you are. So I really appreciated that.
I actually remember that.
Yes, sir. And just to say, I'm wearing my Jewish star now. Since then, I just dropped all the. I wear it to identify with the Hebrew people.
Right
on. I have Jewish descendancy as well, although I'm Puerto Rican. And if either of you see Rabbi Singer again, tell him I still haven't found his hubcap, so he'll know what I talked about. But
all right, good deal.
Yeah, I wear my Jewish star in solidarity with them, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of our people.
That's awesome.
So thank you to the both of you. Sure. But yeah, I just had a question. Since we're talking about evil, I had been considering something that I had come across, and I was talking with William about my question, and the question is with when Eve is speaking with the serpent, and the serpent is telling her that God knows that in the day that you eat, you shall not die, but your eyes will be open, you'll know good and evil. And then the woman sees the tree, and she says that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. And so I'm wondering, well, if they didn't know, Adam and Eve, if they didn't have any concept of good and evil, how could they know about wisdom? But I really wanted to know, in Scripture we're told to seek after wisdom, and above all things to seek wisdom. And so if the tree provided wisdom or made one wise, why would God prohibit them from that?
Okay.
Go ahead and...
Hey, once again, thanks for taking my question.
You betcha. Noel, thank you, brother.
You guys keep up good.
Awesome.
Right.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Go ahead and hang up now, too. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Rabbi?
All right. My answer may be a little weird, but all my answers are a little weird, so what did you expect? Okay. The tree is already there. The tree has already been planted. Okay. And even though it was never explicitly stated to Adam and Eve, there's a second tree also that God doesn't want them to eat from, even though, as I said, that it was not explicitly stated, and that's the tree of life. Now, basically, without really understanding it, because if you don't know what evil is, you don't know what bad is, how do you even know that disobeying God is something to avoid, is something bad? Okay, when God said to Adam, not to Eve, when God said to Adam, on the day you eat of it, dying you will die. Okay, what is death to Adam if he doesn't know what bad is? He doesn't know that death is something to avoid. So, and on the other tree, it explicitly states that God. Why did God send Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden? It explicitly says that the reason they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden was to separate them from the tree of life. Why? Because they were already like God and the angels, knowing the difference between good and evil. If they had also eaten the fruit of the tree of life, they would have become immortal, which would have made them completely like God and the angels. So God and the angels have two characteristics that when Adam and Eve were made, they did not have. One was immortality, and one was knowing the difference between good and evil. And God says, got to kick them out so they won't become completely like us by both knowing the difference between good and evil, since they already ate the fruit of that tree, but also becoming immortal by eating the fruit of the tree of life. Which means that if they have to eat the fruit of the tree of life to become immortal, they're already mortal. So God made Adam and Eve mortal to begin with. Mortality was a function of life. When God says to the everything else, be fruitful and multiply, it's because they have to replace themselves. When God says before they ate that fruit, be fruitful and multiply, it's because God knows that Adam and Eve have to replace themselves. Okay, so the question is why is the tree there? What does it mean when they eat of it? And why wouldn't God want them to eat from it? So their choice, even if they didn't realize they even had this choice, is to eat the fruit of the tree of life to become immortal and live forever, but live in ignorance, live without culpability of their choices. We just said 5 minutes ago that if you don't have bad, why should you get credit for choosing to do good? Okay. If you don't know the difference between good and evil, if you're not making a choice between good and evil because you don't even know what the two terms mean, why should you get benefit? Why should you get a reward? Why should there anything be pleasant if you choose to do good? So my answer is Adam and Eve were like children. Okay? They were like children. And a parent saying to the child, don't jump on the bed. The child hears jump on the bed. Okay? If the parent says, don't eat before dinner because you'll ruin your appetite, the child hears eat before dinner. So I think that God wanted Adam and Eve to make a choice between immortality in one hand and knowing the difference between good and evil. What's the point of knowing the difference between good and evil? Again, if I don't know the difference between good and evil, I'm not culpable for my choices. If a person doesn't know the difference between good and evil when they commit a crime, it's called the insanity plea, and they're not given punishment for their act. They're given mental help, psychology help. So I think what happens there is that God put the tree there, wanted Adam and Eve to choose to be culpable for their choices. Look, there's a split second after Eve eats her fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where she makes the choice to hand it to her husband, Adam. With all due respect to members of my sex, men usually need their wives, their significant others, to help them learn to grow up. And so Eve says, Adam, you're not going to grow up if you don't know the difference between good and evil and make a choice accordingly to choose to do good. You got to become responsible for your choices. And so Eve, as a hero, not as the instigator of evil, but as a hero, gives Adam the fruit of the tree of the difference between good and evil so that he becomes responsible for his choices, in effect, helping him grow up. So I think God puts the tree there because God really wants them to grow up. What is a parent who loves the child doesn't want to make the child dependent upon the parents so that they never leave the roost. They never leave the house. A parent wants the child to grow up and get off on his own. That's the purpose, function, task, job of being a parent, is to be able to raise your children, because there's going to come a time where you're not going to be around and they're going to have to be fending for themselves. And that's true with all of life. Some animals kick the birds out of the nest immediately. Okay. Some animals stay with their offspring for years, but eventually there comes a time where they're going to have to learn how to be on their own. That's what loving parents want for their children. God, who is the parent we all wish we could be, the perfect parent, also wanted that for Adam and Eve and all future human beings. And so God plants the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then basically says to Adam and Eve, hey, look, there's a tree there. Don't eat from it, knowing that they're going to hear, eat from it. So that's my explanation.
Sorry, Rabbi, I'm actually taking a call right now. Can you hear me?
No,
okay?
I figured that.
Yeah. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm going to pass through the next caller. Noel, sit tight. I'll be back with you in just a second. I already know who's supposed to be next here. Where are you at? Give me 1 second to get the right number here. One momento. Okay. This is definitely a full-time job. Okay, 1262. Here we go. All right, Igor, I think I've got you. Are you there? Oh, let me turn him up. Yep, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. You're live on the air. Please go ahead with your question, Igor.
Good evening, William and Rabbi Stuart. It's a pleasure to be back. My
Why?
question has to do, Rabbi, with the Talmud in contrast to the New Testament. As far as I know, oral tradition is as old as the Torah itself, but according to what I researched, it wasn't until the middle of the first century when it began to be written down in what is now the Talmud. At this time, if my dates are not incorrect, the Pauline letters already existed, and if I'm not mistaken, some Gospels too. So my question is, do you think that if the Talmud had been written earlier, would Paul get away with as much as he was able to accomplish? Was it not a strategic error not to have written the Talmud sooner? In other words, if the Talmud had been written 2 centuries earlier, for example, do you think that Christianity might not have existed at all?
Okay. Go ahead and hang up down, Tootie, for your answer so I can free up the phone lines. Rabbi, go ahead with this. Thank you, Igor.
All right. My answer is it wouldn't have changed a thing, and I'll tell you why. Okay. I don't believe Christianity in any way, shape, or form comes out of Judaism. I don't think Christianity is based on Judaism. I think that Christianity is 100% pure pagan idolatry of the Greco-Roman world. And as you've probably heard me say repeatedly on this show and other places and, Facebook or wherever, the single statement, his mother was human, his father was God, is also said about Hercules, Dionysus, Perseus. Perseus came into existence without the act of sex, like a virgin birth. Okay, so I don't see Christianity as derived from Judaism. I think Christianity was eisegesis into the text. Okay, Christianity was shoved into the Hebrew scriptures, and it's like frankly, it's like in my book, where Joe plants a garden with roses, and Luke comes along and plants whatever I did. I forgot the name. I forgot what I just said. Okay, start over. David plants roses, and then Luke comes along and plants daffodils. And then Luke says, "Oh, look, the daffodils are growing among the roses. Therefore, the roses naturally turned into the daffodils." I hope I did that right, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. Okay. And I see Christianity as like Luke planting and then turning around and trying to say that was the natural development of the roses to turn into daffodils. But I honestly think that's what Christianity did and does. So because I don't think Christianity is derived from Judaism, even though it might have been influenced by Judaism, even though in order to be attractive and to attach itself to something as old as Judaism was, remember, Judaism by the time of Jesus was already, it depends on what historian you want to go follow, but anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 years old, somewhere in that range. Okay, Moses is like 1450. Solomon is 900. David is about 1,000 years before Christianity came along. Okay, so it is, in order to be able to say our religion goes back to creation and our God who creates is a moral, ethical creation, Christianity attaches itself to Judaism, invests its own theology and religion into what they think is Judaism, like the Hebrew scriptures, and then enabling people to say, well, my religion goes back to creation because we join with the Christians. So I think that they are independent of Judaism. I think that they may be influenced by Judaism, maybe, but I don't think they're reliant on Judaism. And so I don't think if the Talmud was 500 years before that, then Christianity would be different at all. The most basic elements that make up the foundation of Christian theology are unbiblical, contradict biblical precepts, principles. So I don't, if they picked up anything in the Talmud, if the Talmud had been written 200 years before, written down 200 years before Jesus, they may have tried to take stuff from it in order to make themselves look Jewish, but I don't think it would have changed anything at all, because they were already violating principles of the Bible, which predates the Talmud by pick a number. Why would they then try to be more in line with the Talmud if the Talmud had already been around too? That's my answer.
And there you go. There you go. Okay, cool. All right, moving on to the next caller. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hello, this is Israel calling from Montana.
Welcome back, Israel. Go right ahead with your question.
Hello, Mr. Federow. This question is about why do people feel like JC is the Messiah when he prophesied like a lot of prophets did and fed people like Elijah did with nothing, and did miracles like Elisha and Elijah and other people throughout the Torah? What makes them think that Emmanuel's the Messiah over all those guys? And did he ever say that he was the Messiah, or was that other people saying that he was, and then he's like, well, don't tell them?
You know what? Honestly, that's something I've been speculating for a long time. The latter of the two, because he never. I don't remember him coming out and saying it, but he did ask Peter. And Peter, what's interesting is when Peter responded, Peter didn't say, "I believe you're the Son of God," or that you're God. He said, "I think you're the Christ," which is Messiah. Which means even Peter didn't think he was a deity. He just thought he was. So that's interesting you said that. That's a great question. I'm going to pass this on to Rabbi. Thank you, Israel, for calling in. Go ahead and hang up, tune in for your answer. Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
You too, brother. Bye. That's a great. I love that question. That's great. Go right ahead, Rabbi.
I love the question too. Okay, but my response, okay, is wait a minute, William. Restate the question because I want to make sure I answer it.
Okay. There was kind of basically two angles. One of them mainly was, why is it that they jumped on Jesus being the Messiah just because he did the miracles and he prophesied,
right,
whenever we had prophets that do the same thing? And then his follow-up question was, did Jesus himself even think he was a Messiah, or was he just like asking them, and when they told him, we think you're the Messiah, he said, shut up, don't tell nobody. So, which is weird. That's also kind of bizarre. So
to respond to the former, okay, I'm sorry, to respond to the latter, remember there are messiahs and there is the Messiah. And when Jesus says, who do you think I am? Peter says, I think you're the Christ. I think you're the Messiah. Okay. I'm not sure if the concept would have been that concretized in Peter's mind that he might have said, you're anointed, picked by God to do something special. Not necessarily the Messiah, but a Messiah, an anointed one picked by God to do. I mean, there were plenty of messiahs walking around. Okay, kings, prophets, the high priest, rocks. There's a whole list of things that were anointed. And what does it mean to be anointed? Picked by God to do something specific in the real world that everybody will be able to perceive with their own five senses. So I'm not even sure what Peter and Jesus might have meant when Jesus says, who do you think I am? And Peter says, I think you're the Christ. I think you're the Messiah. I think you're anointed.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't remember the Greek there. I don't know Greek, but I don't remember looking at the Greek well enough to answer if he says, I am a Christ or I am the Messiah.
Larry Beck said in chat, interesting too. He said Peter was like really upset when Jesus told him he had to die. Obviously, he was upset because the Messiah is not supposed to die. He's supposed to like live and have children and prosper.
Right, which means that the whole concept of the Christian definition of the term Messiah wasn't known by the Jews, even Jesus' own disciples, until after he's dead and buried, and they have to figure out where to go from there. And my go-to book, When Prophecy Fails, by Leon Festinger, the sociological study of the University of Wisconsin or somewhere, on how groups respond when they think they have prophecy and it does not take place, and it fits Christianity to a T. But that's a discussion in and of itself.
And by the way, guys, that's Isaiah 53:10. If you're looking for where it says that Jesus or that the Messiah will have seed and he'll have children, he'll actually prosper, and it says God's plan will flourish in his hands and all this other stuff, not die. In fact, it doesn't say. It said that evil will be crushed, but not killed. So keep that in mind too. So.
It never says. Interesting though. Yes. Right. So whether Jesus himself ever said, "I am the Messiah," and remember, the stories of the New Testament could have been invented years and years and decades after Jesus was dead and buried. So if you want to believe the story, who do you say I am? I believe you're the Christ. You're absolutely right. Upon this rock, my church will be built. And then 2 sentences after that, Jesus calls Peter, get behind me, Satan. So if you want to believe any of those stories actually happened, go right ahead.
And where was it? Where was it also where he said that he was like, "Blessed are you guys because you guys are only the Holy Spirit could reveal this to you." And then 5 minutes later, he's like, "Are you guys so stupid you can't get it?" Paraphrased, of course, but still.
Right. And truth be told, they really couldn't get it because they were stupid. Jesus feeds the people with loaves and fishes, and then later in the same gospel, he has to do it again with less people, more fish, and more bread, and they don't think he can do it.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah, that's true. I already did it once. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. We'll get time for one more question. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name. Where are you calling from? Let me do that again. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name. Where are you calling from? Please turn down your computer first.
My name is Micah. I'm calling from Dayton, Ohio. And I have a couple questions. So I'm wondering about when Mashiach arrives, in the age of Mashiach, if will there be sort of a merging of the natural and the supernatural? Will men be able to see angels and Hashem, or how that plays out, how that works out? I know it talks about the knowledge of the Lord will cover the earth as the sea. I'm just kind of wondering how that plays out.
Okay.
And then my second question is, when does the resurrection talked about in Daniel happen in the Mashiach timeline? Will that be at the start of Mashiach's reign?
That's a good question.
Or is that later on in time? Just curious about those things.
Okay, right on. Do me a favor. Send me that in an email also, because I might try to feed that in on a couple more shows too, because I'm kind of curious of what varying opinions are. So that'd be kind of nice. Thank you for your call.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
you bet. Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah, but see, William, that's the point.
Varying opinions.
Varying opinions.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Everybody knows the elements that are supposed to go into the events that lead up to the Messiah coming, and the Messiah coming, what happens after he's been here, and all that. The elements are known, but the chronology, the order, when they occur within the context of his coming, okay, you get disagreements on. Okay. Is there? When does the bodily resurrection take place? When does it take place in terms of when the nations of the world recognize that God is God, that the Jewish idea of God is God. Okay, all the elements that go into it, there are different opinions on the chronology and the order in which they take place. So I can't answer definitively because I don't think there's a definitive chronology. I think there are different rabbis who come up with different, orders of things. Okay. So I'll be curious to know what the other rabbis say.
Sure.
They know more about this than I do, I guarantee you.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot that it talks about in TaNaCh about those details. So I think it would be...
because it's interpretation of verses in the TaNaCh.
Right.
So,
Yep, very good. Good Lord, hold on. Got one more caller. Rev Robbins, yum. What's up there, Rev?
Hey, guys.
Hey, man. You called in. Man, I was literally just fixing to toggle off the availability switch, and you called in right in the nick of time. Go right ahead with your question.
Oh, no, awesome. Cool. Okay, cool. Hey, so question for you. I was wondering about Matthew chapter 2, Matthew's infancy narrative. Now, I've heard Rabbi Singer talk about the things that Matthew got wrong in there, somewhat. But what did Matthew get right about that? I know about the Messiah being born in Bethlehem and being born to a virgin. But what else does it say his birth is gonna be? Is there gonna be are there gonna be wise men? Is there gonna be a star that shines over his house in Bethlehem? What else is said about the actual? Yeah.
All right. I'm just as curious about the contradictions. Thank you, brother. Appreciate your call.
Oh, yes, sir.
You bet. Bye-bye. All right.
And I don't think any of that is a Jewish prophecy of what's supposed to happen. Okay. There are plenty of Jews who had a following of people who believed that the person they followed was in fact the Jewish Messiah, going to do all the Jewish Messiah things, even though they turned out to be wrong. But not one of them who said, I am the Messiah, or who had a following of people who thought they were the Messiah, none of them said, oh, I was born in Bethlehem. Okay? Not one of them said, oh, you meant Bethlehem of Judea. Actually, I was born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Okay, none of them felt compelled to say, I was born in Bethlehem, because the idea that the Messiah has to be born of Bethlehem isn't a Jewish idea. None of them said, oh, the three kings who came to visit me when I was a baby growing up, none of that. Did they feel they had to prove happened to them, because none of them thought that these elements that are in Matthew had to be fulfilled for them to be the Messiah. You follow what I'm saying, William? Is that clear?
Yes, sir. I believe so.
Okay. So all of these things that they say, this was done in order to fulfill, okay, whoever said it had to be fulfilled, whoever said it was prophecy, whoever said it had to be fulfilled, prophesied about the Messiah. This is an old one. Maybe we should do it again. We probably try to talk about it every Christmas season, which we're now entering. But Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John do not agree on most of the elements that go into the birth narrative. Okay? Mark says nothing about the birth. John has a completely different view of Jesus. Okay, that from the moment of creation, Jesus is by the side of the Father and waiting for his turn to be incarnated as a human being. Okay, the later the book, the later the gospel comes into existence, the earlier the concept of the Messiah exists. Okay, we just said this 10 minutes ago. Mark's narrative, Jesus is basically walking along, meets this guy, John the Baptist. When he comes out of the water, God picks him. Okay? That's the earliest which means that the existence of Jesus as the Messiah is the latest. Okay, John, the last gospel, puts the existence of the Messiah long before, and then gets, the Word gets incarnated as the Messiah. So the earlier, the later the narrative, the earlier the Messiah, Jesus, is in existence. Okay, but none of those elements, not one of those elements that I know of, okay, in Matthew and in Luke, the only two places that have birth stories, none of those elements did any of those they were false messiahs, but they didn't feel compelled to say, oh yeah, I was born in Bethlehem, I had 3 kings visit me, I had shepherds, none of that.
Right.
They didn't feel compelled to, because that's not a Jewish prophecy regarding the Messiah. So if they thought they were the Messiah, they didn't feel compelled to have to show that those things happened to them.
One thing that's always confused me is somebody could ask me, hey, how do I get to your house? And I could look up in the sky and try to find whatever star I could think is right above my head and say, okay, and might be a star they even identify with. And I'm saying, I'm thinking right below Saturn. And they're going to lead you right to the house? Really? That's just retarded.
You know how low to the ground the star would have to be?
Yeah.
To be considered to be above a single house in the middle of Bethlehem, and why the star had to go to Jerusalem first, and then take a left turn to get to Bethlehem.
Yeah.
The whole story is very far-fetched.
Very true. Well, guys, if you haven't seen it yet, Hebrew Jumpstart right now is at 463,000 views in 10 months because it is an awesome, awesome teaching method that Rabbi Federow has done. If you
still waiting for Mitch to put up my workbook to help people practice their Hebrew.
Nice, and this is good. And the workbook really is going to be such a good learning and I think also, I think you should consider sometime this year really just creating a part 2 to the next step of these videos.
The next step is what?
The next step of learning. So I'm gonna kind of click through here a little bit.
The next step of learning is grammar.
That's what I'm saying. You got to come up with a teaching method on that. And
I have a teaching method. I'm just bored by it.
Now, well, maybe because you've seen it 100,000 times.
Yeah. All right.
So,
William, remember, there's only one place I go to get it video recorded.
Yes, that's me. And yes, you guys, I am very proud of the way that turned out. It took probably 40 plus hours. 40 plus hours to build this video. Maybe more. Maybe I think it was more like 50 or 55. I can't remember. But it was worth every second, though. This is beautiful.
I hope to the people who find it meaningful and useful, it was worthwhile.
Absolutely.
And for 460 some odd thousand views inside of 10 months, which I hope to continues throughout as long as YouTube is up. Okay, it's incredible.
Absolutely. And also, don't forget about Rabbi's books, Judaism and Christianity, A Contrast, available in Spanish and Portuguese. But brilliant, small package, stick of dynamite for sure. If you don't have them, you can find them on Amazon or just go to What Jews Believe. That's probably a better place to do it. Go to whatjewsbelieve.org, which is a great website also. I tell everybody it's a website designed like a cell phone app. So you go there, there's all these hyperlinks with questions that you can click on for the answers. It's really brilliant. So you should save that to your phone, and that way you can have quick answers to things when you're on the go. So, Rabbi, it's been a good night. Thank you for your time, and thank you all for tuning in.
Always thank you.
Guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications, share the channel information, and we look forward to seeing you same time, same place again next week. Hashem willing. Take care, everybody. Shalom.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה